Friday the 17th of April 2020. Good morning. Roller coasters, recovery and reassurance. As the son of a Baptist minister, every talk from my dad always seemed to have 3 points. These were aimed at helping his congregation to remember his message. I look at the economic situation today and the amount of information can be overwhelming. To that end, I always go back to basics and try to filter my thoughts into points. So here is my sermon for today, starting with point 1, roller coasters. For markets to recover, the first thing they must do is calm down. One index that we consider is the VIX, Volatility Index. I tend to refer to this as the fear index. Global market realised annual volatility has averaged around 15.3% since 1990. Today, it stands at around 78%. If it is any consolation, the level has been as high as 90% in the past. Nonetheless, we are currently experiencing extreme markets. Last week, I said that I was concerned by the overexuberance of markets. This behaviour is often driven by a fear of missing out and machine trading, not necessarily common sense and fundamental data. Goldman Sachs estimate that 70% of trades are now carried out by machines. Since my last commentary, the FTSE 100 is down by nearly 4% at the time of writing. This supports our view that markets were getting ahead of themselves, and it may well be a good thing. I now am watching for signs of reduced market volatility. We all want recovery, but it needs to be sustainable. The FTSE 100 faces a big challenge which worsens with every day of the lockdown. A few weeks ago I shared how many UK companies were buying back their own shares. This is usually a positive sign and can pave the way to recovery, as it did in 2009. The rules of the government bailout package are that any companies receiving government assistance may not buy back their own shares. I am concerned by the impact of this rule, although I completely understand why it is in place. In addition to this, UK banks have ceased dividend payments to their shareholders, and this behaviour has spread across many FTSE companies. One fund house currently estimates that around 45% of usual dividends on the FTSE 100 will be lost in 2020. The current market news is extreme. I believe that this explains our roller coaster markets. The problem with a roller coaster is that you will get hurt if you attempt to bail out mid-ride. We can see the tracks ahead and we know that a calmer ride will come. Hang on, folks. Our client portfolios have been well protected from the full effects of the market volatility, showing less than half the losses of the FTSE 100 over the year. This is no reason for complacency, but we are in a good position so far. Point 2, recovery. Global stimulus pumped into the financial system in the past 6 weeks has now surpassed the entire stimulus packages of the 2008 and 9 financial crisis. Yes, you heard that correctly. To the estimation of one fund house we work with, around $4.2 trillion of quantitative easing, or QE, has already happened in the UK, US, Europe and Japan, and a further $6.9 trillion of fiscal packages have been implemented in the same regions. This doesn't even include the central bank interest rate cuts. This market stimulus is on another level, but it has worked so far, clearly saving the US bond market from entering a financial crisis all over again just a couple of weeks ago. I believe that policymakers have learned from the recent past crises, and this is why I'm much more positive about recovery. The question is, what will happen, or what is likely to happen, as a consequence of this stimulus once recovery is underway? I love history, and I often find it a lens through which we can try to solve today's puzzles. The impact of the 2008 and 2009 QE was a huge rise in assets such as shares, bonds and property. This caused 2 problems: massive asset inflation and the emergence of populism, because the rich became richer whilst the rest became poorer. My early guess at the future is that Western governments will do just about anything to avoid populism again. This means governments that are less focused on paying off debt and more focused on public spending. In turn, I believe this will put money into the hands of people who will spend it this time around. Therefore, we need to brace ourselves for inflation in a while, and we shall be looking at how we can build in some protection for our clients' portfolios. Third and final point, reassurance. The OPEC Plus deal this week to cut oil production by 10 million barrels per day is a move in the right direction for oil companies. Whilst the price of oil has not risen yet, it shows that the OPEC nations can get back around the table to work out their differences. I also believe that the global demand for oil will increase now as more and more countries return to work. Furthermore, world markets are becoming more immunised to CV-19 news. I said that this would happen in previous articles, as markets tend to overreact to the unknown, and then they harden to the same repeated news. To this end, I personally do not see resurgent cases throwing markets into another meltdown, unless those resurgent cases occur on such a large scale that they force whole countries back into full lockdown. We're hearing how the massive Nightingale Overflow Hospital in London is barely in use, with only 19 of its 4,000 beds recently reported as being occupied. This news is repeated throughout the UK, where overflow makeshift hospitals are not even being used, and even previously cancelled operations and cancer treatments are now being rescheduled. Governments around the world have worked collectively and diligently to prevent this epidemic becoming anything like as damaging to human life as previous ones, such as the Spanish flu of 1918, which took the lives of 20 to 50 million people globally, and the Asian flu, which accounted for around 14,000 deaths in the UK alone in 1958. I believe that the UK government now has the upper hand against this virus. It is critical that they produce a plan for what happens next. A bit like the boxer who's covered up and weathered the storm of blows from his now tired opponent. The UK must strain every sinew of its ingenuity to come out fighting, or the cost of this fight will be catastrophic for our jobs, savings, security, and future society. I believe we can all come out of this far faster than the doom and gloom experts are predicting, but the fight back needs to be soon. Until next week, I wish you all the best. Stay safe and stay well.